Welcome to This Week in Heresy, Episode 17, Feminism, Dress Codes, and the Church, with our guest via Skype, Shavon Walker. Hey, Shavon, welcome to This Week in Heresy.
Hello, Gina. Thank you for having me.
This is great. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, my name is Shavon. I was raised Southern Baptist, fell in love with a sweet Catholic boy and became part of his church for a while. Then that relationship ended. So that was the end of that. Still teach Sunday school at the Southern Baptist Church every Sunday without fail. And I've been raised in that tradition, as I stated before. Have done a little bit with Wicca. I do still sometimes practice as a solitary witch. I don't get much of a chance to do that anymore, but, you know, I'm still, my big thing now is not so much religion, but faith. And in my different spiritual paths, I've been trying to learn more about faith. So more or less, that's who I am.
Cool. In the conversations before we decided to do the interview, you were talking about being a woman in the church, and particularly in African-American families, and how that is different than being a white woman in the church. And so why don't you talk a little bit about that from your perspective?
Even within being an African-American woman in a religious context, there's even subcategories of that. Right. So I have friends who are African-Americans in the Catholic tradition. I have friends who are African-Americans in the Methodist or in even non-Christian traditions, Muslim traditions. My experience, the best way to describe it, if you've ever seen the movie The Color Purple and the scenes with Celie in church.
It's been a while.
That's pretty much my experience. I remember growing up and seeing, older women had a designated spot, and it was always, the front on pick one side of the church or whatever. And then older men, same thing. So men sat on one side, women sat on the other. If you had to be of a certain age to wear a hat if you were a woman. And I remember I got a pass one Sunday because it was Easter, and I'd made the hat myself, and I got to wear it that one Sunday, and then I never got to wear the hat again. So I was very sad about that. So, and there are certain things about this particular specifically Southern Baptist experience that, rang true for me when I was watching The Color Purple. All sorts of things. But as far as the role of women, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent.
Okay.
As far as the roles of women, women do take part in the church. Yeah. There is still sort of a stigma in certain areas about women being ministers. We are expected to be basically support staff. So you have the minister and then the first lady. Many first ladies that I know are women who are attractive. They wear these super high heels, the very nice suits, and their hair is perfect and so on. And they sit there. And that's pretty much it. It has not been until recently that you see first ladies taking a role and actually coming up and giving a talk. You'll notice they're called talks, and they don't preach. So that sort of thing. There's still a bit of grumbling, but that's mostly like old school guard. It's starting to change now with the newer ministers who are more than happy to let their wives come up and preach, capital P, while they take a break. So that's rare. It still bothers me, I think, that many of the first ladies I know feel perhaps, I don't know, it could be a personal choice, but I feel it is part and parcel of their role to adhere to this idea of dressing a certain way, looking a certain way, that kind of stuff. I had a pastor of my church, my old pastor is probably, I want to say in his late 70s now. And then the new pastor, who was in his 50s, the old pastor that I had, his wife was from a Church in God in Christ tradition. As a result, she still wore nice suits, had these amazing hats and the heels and the whole 9 yards. She didn't wear a lot of makeup. And the most she wore was maybe foundation. New school pastor, his wife does a whole 9 yards.
Right.
And it's, I don't know, maybe for me, it's a little disturbing because I'm not quite sure what to make of it. She's taking more of a role than my older first lady was, but this dress and this fitting into the role tradition really, it bothers me sometimes. It makes me uncomfortable because I'm like, okay, you're taking this leadership role, but the rest of us are cooks in the kitchen. We are the old lady sitting in the front, you know, waving our handkerchiefs and yelling hallelujah. You know, we are supposed to be mentors to the younger girls, which may or may not work. That's a whole other story.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it too, you know, being dressed to the nines and high heels and stuff, you know, what does that say to the poor women in your congregation? And, you know, and you know, what if there's transgender people or gay people that, you know, they just don't fit that model of the church woman, you know?
Well, and I remember even when I was a kid and I knew the older women in my church were living off Social Security checks and pensions and things like that. There was one store in Oakland where almost everyone would go to get, you know, those outfits.
Right.
And the lady there, I know she had to be making quite a bit of money.
Right. I bet.
Like one suit, my mom bought one suit, and that suit alone cost at least $150 to $200. So, and I'm like, you ladies are showing up in these suits every Sunday. How are you doing that? And let's not even talk about how much your hats must cost. Good grief. So it's insane.
Those are epic.
Right? And I'm like, okay, you know, there's been books written about these hats. Come on. And if you're surviving off your Social Security and your pension and whatever, how are you taking this money and, you know, spending it on these outfits? I think about the scriptures, and there's one that says our best in front of God is as filthy rags. But then there's a flip side, which is, you know, you're supposed to present yourself as your best to God. And I think that's partly where they're getting that from. I'm like, yes, but. So yeah, it's a thing. I'm sorry. We were talking about roles of women and I got off into clothing.
No, you know, it's an important thing because, you know, there's kind of a bit of a cognitive dissonance for me because I go to City of Refuge, UCC, and it is, you know, it has all of those trappings. I mean, there are women with women of many gender identifications with fantastic hats, amazing clothing, but it's not a requirement that you be that way. Like, you know, we have the mothers and they have their row in the church, but if you're falling out and you're in the spirit and you're dancing around, they don't mind letting you sit with them because they'll help you sort yourself out.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's always a good thing, you know? Yeah. And you have a very good point about that. For my tradition, it was more, you do not have a choice. I remember getting into trouble when I was little during vacation Bible school because I wanted to wear a denim skirt. So, but my mother was like, no, you are not allowed to wear jeans in church, but it's not pants, it's a skirt. So first of all, if you were a woman, you could not wear pants. Right. Second of all, denim was not allowed because it was too close to pant material. Right. So all the other kids got to wear denim skirts and I had to go in a church outfit. Right. It was a pain. Yeah. So there was that. And one of the good things about my new minister is that he doesn't really care. If you're a woman and you wear pants, whatever, just show up. That's all he cares about. You know, there are other things about his ministry that make me uncomfortable, but at least clothing is one of the things that I don't have to worry about anymore. Right. Which is great.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, to start.
How do you think the roles of women, I mean, where do you think that role comes from? Like, you know, that you know, women can't preach, but they can have a talk, or, they have to have the hats, they have to be dressed a certain way. Where do you think that comes from?
Let's see. I know that the idea of women not preaching, because my old pastor told me this, that he heard this argument a lot from Paul. Women are supposed to be silent in the church, right? So, he would hear these older ministers grumbling about women are supposed to be silent, women preachers not ordained by God, blah, 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 blah. And he would just kind of be like, I know some women preachers who could preach you out of your seat, so shut up.
Right.
But so there's that. And then the idea of being dressed up again, you're supposed to present your best when you're coming to fellowship and participate. So of course you want to dress up, and if you've got the money to spend on that $200 suit, then doggone it. and I'll be fair. To be fair, there are men who do the same thing. I remember one particular Easter, the then deacon of our church, his wife and his 2 kids all came in dressed in gold.
Wow.
He had a gold suit, matching socks that had Jesus spelled out on the socks in gold.
Awesome.
And then matching tie. I was like, you must tell me where you found this, know?
That's just epic all by itself.
Right? His wife had a gold suit with a gold scarf. His daughter had a really cute gold dress, and his son had a little suit that matched daddy. And I was so impressed.
That's so
it was the
cute.
cutest thing ever. So I'm like, okay, so men kind of fall into this too.
Oh yeah.
And it happens. But yeah, for women, especially since men can take leadership roles, for them, the clothing is more of secondary. A secondary thing. For women, it's more, okay, I'm going to be cooking in the kitchen, so I'm going to wear this really awesome suit, and then I'm going to go in the back and change it to my house dress and a pair of slippers.
Right.
But you will see me in my awesome suit for like 15 minutes.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I'm thinking all of that comes from, really. So, yeah.
Do you think the younger generation is pushing back against that?
Boy, howdy. In a sense, yes. In a sense, no. I say yes because, again, when I was younger, I remember, I remember other church-going friends of my age getting into trouble for wearing, sandal heels with no stockings.
Right.
Shirts that were a little bit too tight and that sort of thing.
Right.
Now that they're older, though, with their own kids, I see them falling into the whole, we're going to wear suits now and, hats and things like that. So I just kind of look at them and I'm wondering, where did all of that go? Was it the act of having your own children and wanting to represent what the church was representing to you when you were their age? Where is that going? On the flip side, though, I do see slightly older women. Well, now that the new pastor is in, women in the church are wearing more pants.
Right.
The mothers still adhere to their dresses. But women are now wearing pants. The only time you ever really hear anything about clothing now is if it's too tight, that kind of stuff. And I still have one dear mother at my church. She's a good lady and she does mean well. who will occasionally gently scold me if she feels that my tops are too low. And I tend to be somewhat generously endowed, so it's kind of obvious if it's too low.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I kind of happen to show that I have a curve. There's a curve of a boob. There's not even real cleavage. What is this? I don't even. But in general, most of the younger folks are not adhering to the same restrictions, but the ones who were necessarily raised in that environment are. So me personally, my rule of thumb is mostly, will it get me yelled at for showing too much?
Right.
And is it work appropriate? If it's work appropriate, then it's probably church appropriate. And one of my favorite things to wear when I can is salwar kameez.
Mm-hmm.
And so long flowing pants with, the tunic. I found a lot of them. My area tends to be populated by a lot of Middle Eastern and Indian folks. So every once in a while, somebody's cleaning out the closet and doing a giveaway. And I'm like, I'll take it. So, and they're perfect. They're perfect for work. They're perfect for church. And everybody's happy. So I'm like, all right. We have a thing here. This is good. I can make this work for me. And then I don't have to feel uncomfortable. I don't feel like, ripping off my outfit the minute I get inside. And it's a freedom in a sense. It's a small freedom, but it's freedom.
Yeah.
So
those outfits are really nice. I had one once and it was okay. It was a little tight around my chest area. Just the way it was cut is kind of funny.
It can be awkward.
Yeah. But, it worked for what we needed it for and it was nice. So, and it was really comfortable because it was really hot that day.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we were doing a wedding. Our group was doing a wedding. So it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So moving back on to more about feminism, because, we were talking earlier before doing this, about, how feminism is kind of a dirty word. And, and like I said, there's a little cognitive dissonance here because there's a big difference between your church and my church in the fact that they're similar in practice and similar in the way it's run. But, my church is led by a same-gender loving woman who is a phenomenal preacher. And I think all but a couple of people on the shepherd's table are women. And they're all really very rockin' women pastors. And so feminism seems to be, feminism is the rule of the day. and it's great. But what do you see in your church as the role of feminism?
Boy, that's a good question. It's in my church because we now have a mix of these old school folks and new school, which really is kind of old school, but not.
Right.
Feminism for us is, the deacon that I was talking about earlier and his wife are both ministers. They both went through seminary and got, and that was pretty incredible. And my first thought was, wow, they are ministers now. Wait, she's a minister now. So to me, that was feminism. The idea of the first ladies getting up to talk being called a sermon instead of merely a talk like it was with the last first lady. Right. That's feminism. As you can see, it's really little bitty steps.
Yeah.
And I keep, when I think about how far we have to go, I flash way, way, way back to when I was like 10 or 11. And I remember I was looking for a summer job and I was talking to my old pastor at the time. Right. He was outside, he was cutting the grass. And I said to him, I really need a summer job. Can I cut the grass for you? And he smiled at me and he chuckled and he goes, oh, no. This is man's work.
Oh my.
And every time I think about that, and I kept getting that kind of message throughout my childhood, especially from the church. This is man's work. This is woman's work. And that's changed somewhat since our new pastor has started, but not by much. I still don't see too many women on the roster. When it comes time for visiting ministers. I noticed also that some of the evangelists that used to come when my old pastor was there aren't there anymore. At least I don't hear about them coming as often anymore. I also noticed that there are a lot, and I don't know if it's this way in your church, and if it is, it might be for a slightly different reason, a lot of single women in my church. Very few single men. Now, as far as feminism goes, I see more single men than there used to be. But they're also, they are young men in their late teens, early 20s.
Right.
whereas the single women are somewhere in their early 30s, late 40s, late 50s, whatever. So you've got that huge age gap there.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, yay, we've got this female minister and we've got a first lady who actually preaches, and that's it. So we have a lot of work to do. And then it's difficult even broaching the subject, because it's like, how do you say it without getting yelled at? I don't even know if that's an issue with this particular version, this particular iteration of my church now, but I always have that sort of PTSD sort of worry thing going on about it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and one more thing too.
Right.
I remember for a young friend of mine, and myself, we were the last two people to get married under my old pastor. And I remember he was the one who did the ceremony. He was also the one who, of course, signed the paperwork and all that other stuff. I remember that the first lady didn't really do anything. She was there at my reception. She was there at my friend's reception too. Right. But when it was time for the ceremony, she was in the audience, and that was pretty much it. And I was kind of hoping she'd at least say a blessing or something, and nothing happened. So yeah, again, we have a very long way to go. Yeah.
Well, I think feminism in general, I mean, if you just look at the internet, and we were also talking about this earlier, just in general on the internet, feminism has been a really big deal lately. And then I don't know, I've been paying attention to it more in the tech industry side of things, which is just, tech.
Yeah, I'm learning that.
But I think in general, it's coming to the fore through the internet. And I think it's really kind of making the rounds of, hey, maybe treating women like crap isn't a really good idea anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I'm thinking about, and of course, we also talked a little bit about intersectionality. Yep. I'm thinking about, my church background and the way I was raised and the conservative nature of the way I was raised and about feminism. And right. When I read about the stuff, especially the stuff that happens in the tech industry, I can almost hear my old pastor saying again, this is man's work.
Exactly.
So, and of course, if it's man's work, you should expect to get crap because you're interfering in a man's world. Men are supposed to, be the providers of the family, and men are supposed to, go out and make the money. In fact, that's another thing that I remember with my old pastor and the first lady. He was the worker in the family. They had both agreed he was going to work, she was going to stay home.
Right.
And I remember going over to visit because there were times where I would come over and, work on their computer, that kind of thing. And I would hear the interplay between the two of them. And there were parts of it that I kind of liked. And there were parts of it that made me a little uncomfortable. I was like, well, if something happens to him, heaven forbid he should have a stroke or, suddenly die, she would be in so much trouble. Right. I can't fathom living my life that way. But it's man's work, so that's the price you pay, So I think about situations like that and how it can be a good thing in certain situations, but inevitably someone takes it and makes it a turn for the worse, which I think is often what happens when you have, anti-feminism in the tech industry or in other areas as well. Right. So...
Well, it's been just such a big thing in the church, in general. Even now with the Catholic Church still doesn't ordain women, and there's a bunch of denominations of any race and color and creed, that still don't ordain women. You've got your Mormons, you've got various versions of Protestant churches. And, for me, it's kind of hard to fathom because of the church I go to anyway. It's like, of course women are preachers. Right. Of course women are ministers. But just like, we're in the 21st century, and women have pretty much proven that they can do just about anything. And yet here we are, we're still making cents on the dollar, and it depends on what race you are, how much that is. We're still trying to fight for the being able to control our own bodies with sex ed, counseling, abortion.
Don't even get me started.
Well, it's funny because I think people don't always see the spiritual connections to that, and where the church plays a role in this.
Man.
And it's pretty obvious in the areas that have the super fundamentalist things where, you see Operation Rescue doing their hideous thing.
The Quiverful movement.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, right?
You're right.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry. Thinking about the Quiverful movement, I remember one of my friends posted a link to an ex-member. And she was talking about her experience and how she did not realize that her relationship was abusive until she went to see a counselor. And the counselor basically said, okay, these are all the things that your husband is doing. These are all the signs of abuse. And at first she was like, no, well, he's doing this because of this. And this is what our Bible tells us, and blah, 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 blah. And then she really thought about it and went, wait a minute, that's not what he's supposed to do.
Right.
And I really resonated with that article because I'm like, you know what? In another time and place, that could have been me. I would have fallen for that. I know I would have fallen for that.
Right.
And, to me, it's a shame that experience damaged her faith to the point where she is just like, you know what, forget this. I don't want religion. I don't want any of this anymore. Yeah. It's sad to see somebody take something that could have been a good thing and ruin it for someone else. So there's that. There's, I think about how my church treated sex ed and, contraception, and especially female sexuality in my church, and what a mess that was.
Is it still a problem?
Is it? Not as much as it was, but. We have a new pastor. I don't hear him talking about that very much, to tell you the truth. Mostly what I hear him talking about is homosexuality. Go figure. And B, we don't have as many teenagers in the church as we did. Teenage girls, specifically teenage girls.
Right.
Under the old pastor and when I was younger, I could think of at least, I want to say, 8 or 9 teenage girls at its height. Maybe, no, I take that back, 10 or 12. And that was before I hit puberty. And inevitably, year after year after year, what we heard was, well, not what they heard. All right, I'll be honest. What I heard, specifically me, was keep your mind open and your legs closed.
Oh my!
I will never forget those words because my pastor told me that in his study. And he would preach it again every time he got started on sexuality and women, and especially girls. If I was in the audience, he would always look at me and say, Shavon, keep your mind open and your legs closed.
Oh, my.
And of course, then I had to endure the stare downs from the rest of the girls who inevitably got pregnant. So out of, the 12 of us that there were, I want to say at least 6 of us got pregnant during that time period. And then, they did go on to get married, and have maybe a couple more kids, and that was about it. But I and maybe 1 to 2 other girls avoided getting pregnant during our years, which was kind of, and you would have thought after hearing all that for like over 10 years, what's supposed to happen is, pregnancy rate goes down, right?
Wrong.
Yeah, it didn't quite work that way. So that failed. But and now the new message was, before the old pastor left, there was a group for young ladies called, oh dear, what was the group called? I've just forgotten. But at any rate, their message was, it wasn't keep your mind open and your legs closed. It was be pretty, precious, and private.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, that's kind of creeping me out. Because it just kind of speaks of the, what is that? The virginity
balls.
Yeah. Or and you're making a pledge, like the rings and stuff. And it's just like, purity balls. That's what it is.
I remember watching an episode, I think, about, a man and his two daughters. He was raising them in their own conservative faith. Their church had a purity ball. And I remember a black man and his daughter, he decided, I'm going to bring my daughter to this because I want her to value her virginity. Okay. I don't necessarily agree with everything else that this other church teaches, but I do agree with their position on virginity.
Right.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, number one, you are going to a different church. You prize your daughter's virginity so much that you are willing to go to a church of a different faith to make sure she stays a virgin. Even if you don't necessarily agree with anything else that they teach, you are doing this. Number two, if you had a son, would you be taking him? That's my question.
Absolutely. That's the big question, right?
And then, in my old church, I think the men, the boys were talked to once, maybe twice. Okay, twice. Condoms got mentioned once, as far as I remember.
Right.
And that was it. It was all about, okay, apparently, young ladies, you have the power to make young men lose their common sense, even though apparently men have common sense and everything else but their sexuality. They are animals. Therefore, you must keep your mind open and your legs closed, which never made sense to me. So,
Well,
whatever.
I mean, the thing is, too, where's the teaching of the responsibility for the boys? If the women have to keep their legs closed, then the boys got to keep it in their pants.
Exactly. It takes two to tango.
Right. But, I guess that's another kind of cognitive dissonance thing with my church, because we recently had a blessing of the boys. And, that was mentioned, being responsible, being respectful to women specifically, and being respectful to your partner, whoever that may be, because open and affirming and all that. So, and so it was really interesting because it was all self-identified men and boys that were part of that. And so it was really quite amazing. And I think that's a difference. And I don't think it's just specific for African-American churches either. I think it's any kind of church that is really oppressive to women to one degree or another. It's like the women have to take responsibility for all this stuff, and the boys get, told,
pass.
Yeah, or just like, don't hit your wife,
Right. That's pretty much it right there. Yeah. Don't hit your wife. Love your wife as Christ loved the church. There, we're done. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. But I think that kind of attitude does a disservice to men in general, and it's insulting to them, I think. It's not. It's just saying that you're just a ball of hormones and you can't think for yourself.
And I agree with you 100%. Because of the way I was raised and because of that particular attitude, I have done my best. Like I said, I teach Sunday school on a regular basis, and the students that I get, I have two little girls. One is 10, and I think the other one is 12.
Right.
They're very smart, and they know that they can ask me questions that they would hesitate to ask anyone, including the pastor.
Right.
So when it comes to conversations about sex, about, scripture and things like that, they'll ask me things like, well, why is it that, people seem more concerned about, why is it that my parents will get on my case about boys, but I never hear my grandma say anything to, my big brother? Then I have to answer, okay, well, here's why.
Right.
And they know I'm going to do my best to tell them the truth. And if I don't know an answer, I'll tell them I don't know, but I will find out. Yeah. So that's reassuring.
Right. That's good. I mean, it's good to hear that the girls are thinking about this even now. I mean, but then again, we sexualize girls at a younger and younger. We've been sexualizing girls as a society at younger and younger ages. I remember seeing an article recently about Target's children's clothing, and they showed the shorts for girls and the shorts for boys. And, there was like a 1-inch inseam for the girls' shorts, and they were like these little tiny Daisy Dukey type shorts, you know, and the boys' shorts were like the board shorts that go down to your knees, and you know, and they were the same size, you know, they were like 4T or something, 4 toddler, and they were exact same size, and yet the difference is striking, and you know, and that's so true, even true in adult clothing. But just you know, just see it in kids' clothing is just really shocking, and just kind of like, okay, we're doing something wrong here.
Well, and to make matters worse, what if you are a girl who's hit puberty early? You know,
right.
I hit puberty when I was 9, and buying clothes for me that weren't too tight, or, you know, that especially in the chest area, was a nightmare for my poor mother.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
know, and then I went to, you know, a school that had a dress code, so I could not wear pants at school. It was always a skirt and a top or a dress or something like that. So finding tops that didn't automatically, you know, stick to me, that was an issue.
Right.
And it was just a mess. So yeah, it was difficult, and I feel bad for parents nowadays who are going through this right now and trying to deal, you know, before puberty and then after. So it's rough. It is definitely rough.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, like I was talking to Reagan Chastain a few weeks ago. And, you know, this kind of comes back into the idea that, you know, you have to look a certain way, you have to be a certain way, or God's not going to love you. And, you know, I think it's different along racial lines to, you know, just the way I think the way it's done spiritually and the way it's done in the church is different on racial lines. But I think the idea is the same, is that, you know, God will not love you unless you conform.
And I could see that. There is a woman in my church. She is very striking. She's very tall, very curvy, and somewhat slender. She's actually a model.
Oh, wow.
And because of this, she can get away with stuff that, you know, other young women in the church can't. Her hair is super short. She has piercings. She loves to wear big earrings and fake eyelashes and that kind of stuff. Her daughter is similar. She's not as tall as mom, but, you know, she takes after mom and doing her thing. But she's got the thing that again, she's a model. So, of course, she does this for her work, right? And B, she's still doing the heavy makeup and the earrings and the whole 9 yards and wearing the 6-inch heels. So, okay, all right. This is acceptable church clothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, she can get away with that. I remember telling my mother that I wanted to dye my hair blue. And she kind of went, "Oh, no, you're not." And I actually did. I know you probably can't see it right now, even though we're on Skype and doing visual stuff. I did dye my hair blue, and I chickened out and went for blue-black.
Nice. It's cool, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, there have been times where I've wanted to do piercings. But of course, you know, apparently piercings are not biblically mandated. Therefore, piercing is a sin, unless it's your ears, which is an entirely different story. So that's okay. But anyway.
Right.
So there's that whole physical appearance thing. As much as I have women in my church who wear, you know, weaves and fake eyelashes and stuff like that, you never see anything that is too extreme. Nobody comes to church with their hair a completely different color, not found in nature. You know, right?
I'd be in trouble.
Right? And, you know, you've got the women who kind of have short hair, but not. And then, you know, there's the model girl who does her modeling thing. So, you know, and in my particular church, size is not necessarily an issue because, you know, African-American tradition, we have big women. So
right.
But it's all about how you present yourself in church. Even at church picnics, there's a dress code, which is kind of ridiculous to me. It's a picnic, for crying out loud.
Right.
So, but yeah, God apparently will not love you if your hair is blue. Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble then.
Right? Forgive me, Lord, it is blue-black. Is that acceptable? So yeah.
You know, the funny thing is like I've in circle, you know, we ask the gods these things because, you know, why not? And we're curious, you know, what do the gods think? And the gods are kind of like, like we care what your hair color is.
Right.
Are you worshiping us? Are you doing your work? Okay, great. Next question.
And that's kind of been the sense that I've been given. Like I said, I'm becoming more spiritual now. And I'll show up to church. I'll teach the kids. I'll answer whatever questions I can. And then I'll leave before church actually starts. And when I have prayed, when I have tried to find out, am I going the right way about this? Do I need to straighten my hair and go get a weave and get some fake eyelashes? The answer has usually been, nah, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know, if you were doing something wrong, if you're going on the wrong path, I would have stopped you. In one way or another, I would have let you know.
Yeah, and that's basically the answers I've gotten too. And, you know, when you read scripture, it's like it's not the outward stuff that Jesus is really caring about.
Exactly.
He's like, you know, how are you treating people? How are you being with people? Are you feeding the poor? You know, all that. And, you know, appearance, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, whatever.
Right.
You know, and I think about Jesus as the ultimate itinerant preacher. And I'm like, if anybody wasn't really concerned about appearance, it would have been him. So I'm like, okay. And really the only thing that holds me back from really doing stuff that I really want to do with my appearance is my mom and still that church mentality. Every time I think I want to get out of my church, I realize I do have a mission there. And that's kind of the message that I've been getting too. I know you don't really like it here, but you have a job to do. And your job is to let these kids know this is not the only version of Christianity that exists, and that they do not have to be associated. And that's another pet peeve of mine. They do not have to be associated with, you know, the Quiverful movement. They don't have to be associated with Tag Haggard or any of these other who consider themselves Christians, but they're not. Right. So yeah, it's something. And again, getting back to feminism. Right. That, to me, is the small part that I can play in my church as far as feminism is concerned, letting them know you are more than what the church may tell you are. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with believing in God. There's nothing wrong with being spiritual and praying and the whole 9 yards. Just understand that you have a job to do. There were powerful women in the Bible. Guess what? You could be one of them, too. So, yeah, something to consider, I guess, every time I want to quit.
Right. So do you think since that seems to be your ministry, I wonder if that's kind of how people are moving through these ideas. Like, okay, I don't know if I like these ideas. Well, here's somebody who's saying something different. Sounds interesting. Maybe I can go find out more about that.
Yes, but
but of course, there's always a but.
There's always a but. When I'm teaching, so basically what my rotation is supposed to be is I teach the kids 3 weeks out of the month, and then the last week I and the other Sunday school teacher will switch off. The other Sunday school teacher kind of doesn't make it because she has car issues and back problems and that sort of thing. So often I end up teaching the adults as well. So the stuff that I'm teaching the kids ends up slipping into what I'm teaching the adults. Every once in a while, I might run into some opposition from our current Sunday school superintendent. There was a time where we started talking about evolution.
Oh, Lord.
Boy, howdy. Yeah, okay. So that was an adventure. But in general, I mean, I had one older lady say to me that she remembers reading a verse where Jesus is talking to the disciples and he says, I have other sheep that are not of this flock. And she said to her, that meant the people that are drawn to me are not all Christian. So I was like, wow, I would never have read that verse that way. But okay, I have learned something. So now, and she felt comfortable expressing that to me because she knew what my take was on it. I don't think I've ever heard her say that before. I have never heard her say it since. But in that particular conversation, you know, all right, so there's somebody else here who doesn't necessarily believe every single thing that we are taught. So, because really the party line, as it were, is, Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no man cometh unto the Father but by me,
right.
which means Christianity or bust, basically.
Right.
So, you know, Jews are cool, but Christianity's better.
Right. Well, I mean, I run into that all the time, being who I am. And even in the more inclusive churches, there are still some people that have that, I call it, it's what you learn in the cradle. And, and basically what I feel is that, you don't really get rid of that all the time. And you can be as welcoming and open and affirming as you want, but there's still that there that influences how you think about the world.
It is a hard habit to break, a very hard habit to break. So, yeah. And I admit, learning more about other faiths is kind of like, in general, when it comes to feminist theory and feminist practice, I feel that I don't know a lot. Often I feel, okay, I'm a woman. That's about as far as it goes. And, my conservative upbringing didn't exactly help with that. Go figure.
Right.
But listening to and talking to people of other faiths and other backgrounds helps me learn more about that. And I can bring those ideas in modified form into my church and at very least teach the kids, who can then, think about it and, maybe express it to their grandma, mom, dad, whatever, who may or may not agree, but at least now they can start forming their own opinions, which is the idea.
Right.
So, you get people thinking for themselves, and then, they can take it from there. So.
Absolutely. And, and I feel that way about a lot of the work we've done around gender in the pagan community. It's like, if somebody identifies as a woman, regardless of who they were previously, they're a woman, and they're entitled to be a woman in the world without getting all the crap. And, granted, being a woman in the world, you're going to get crap. It's just how things are at this moment. I mean, we're trying to fight it. We're trying to work on it. But, you're entitled to be a woman regardless.
And really, if you have worked so hard, you have, you've wanted this ever since you understood what a gender binary was, and you have gone through the steps, you've taken the counseling, you've, maybe done the medications and the whole 9 yards. If you have worked this hard to get that gender identity for yourself, then more power to you.
Oh, absolutely.
You have made this choice to do this. A lot of us don't get that choice. We're simply born into it. And, yes, there's a lot of crap associated with being a woman, but I'm assuming a lot of folks who have chosen that gender identity already know about it. And like, okay, I know I'm going to get this drama. That's fine. Bring it on. Right. I will accept that.
Well, for a lot of transgender women, it's a matter of life and death, really.
Absolutely.
They are women and they need to be women, and not transitioning is not an option.
Exactly, because the alternative is not acceptable.
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely not. Either deal with the crap or not, and we can't do not. So,
but I think about all this stuff, and I've been reading a lot about all this stuff going on. And it's like, a lot of my conclusions lately have been, we've taught women a lot of things about how to be in the world and how to avoid getting raped and how to avoid doing this, that, and the other, and being attacked. And, and now it's kind of, if you're a public woman on the internet, then you're going to get attacked. And yet we still fail to look at men and say, hey, you need to teach each other not to pull this crap.
Yep. When I was a substitute teacher, and I get to talk about this now because I'm not doing that anymore. There was one time, this is the best experience subbing I've ever had. One time I was subbing for an advanced placement class. And with, they were good kids. They did their work. We finished everything about 10 to 15 minutes early. Right. And one of my students, just out of the blue, asked me, why is it that, same question that one of my kids asked me, why is it that people are more concerned with girls' sexuality, but they don't say anything to boys? And I was like, that's a good question. And I looked at the clock. I'm like, you know what? We got 15 minutes. All right, we're going to talk about this. Is the door closed?
Right.
So we started talking about it, and I was like, okay, ladies, bear in mind, if you guys get pregnant, you're the ones who have to go through the pregnancy. You're the ones who have to give birth, blah, 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 blah. 9 times out of 10, you're the ones taking care of the child. And the girls are like, yep, yeah, we've heard this one. Yeah, we know. And I'm like, that's why they're mostly focused on you. And the guys are sitting there, either their eyes are glassed over or they're looking confused. And I'm like, you don't get off the hook either, by the way. And I reminded the boys, okay, she can be the hottest thing you ever saw. You don't know if she's telling you the truth any more than a girl does. She doesn't know if the boy is lying to her or not.
Right.
You don't know if she has an STD, just like a girl doesn't. You do have the option to walk away if you get her pregnant, but if you are found out, you can get in a lot of trouble. If you don't know what child support payments are, if you don't know what garnishment of wages are, yeah. And at the very least, your reputation can be ruined in your group. Because no girl is going to want to date you if she finds out that you got 3 girls pregnant. So that's unacceptable. And I remember at the end of the conversation when the bell rang and the students are filing out, I heard one of my boys say, wow, I actually learned something today.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I was like, okay, well, it's a compliment. It's sort of a backhanded compliment, but it's a compliment.
Hey.
It's a start.
We'll take it, right?
So, yeah, I really do think we need to spend more time talking about sexuality to boys and pointing out to them that they do have a responsibility. I've been reading, blogs like the Good Men Project and Daddy Doing Work, that kind of stuff. And they address those issues, which I think is utterly fantastic. Some of those students that I taught, actually some students that I did teach for like a year or whatever, are on my Facebook. I try to share those articles with them because I know the boys are at least going to look at it.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, this is my effort to teach you guys responsibility. I know that some of the girls that I taught have gotten pregnant and, they've had their babies or whatever. I haven't heard about any of the boys. So I'm like, okay, as far as I know, you've managed to stay out of trouble. Let's continue by having you read this, and this. So, it's my effort to keep them aware and focused on what's really important.
Yeah. And, and things like that. At least as far as I think, is that, if you can get through to at least one person, then you've done your job.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And again, that's one of the reasons why I stay at my church. Because I'm like, if I can get through to the little girls, they will grow up to be young women who, at the very least, can sit in church and listen, but they're going to be listening with an ear toward, okay, this I believe, this I don't really have to accept. But at least now I know if somebody asks me, what does your church believe? I can tell them. Then I can tell them what I believe.
Right. Exactly.
There's that.
So this has been a great conversation, but we are unfortunately out of time. No problem. But, we can revisit this at another time if you want to come back. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to have some of the blogs that you mentioned in the show notes, and I will put those there. And if people want to get in touch with you to talk more about this, how can they get in touch with you? Gee, howdy. I am on G+, Walkie74. Okay. I'm also on Ello under Shavon Kathleen. Okay. So, and that is SIOBHAN. All right. There we go. And I know you use that spelling sometimes, so. Yeah. And if there's any comments on the blog to the show notes, I will let you know, and you can respond. Absolutely. There. I would be more than happy to do so. Thank you for having me. Folks who are listening, thanks for listening. It's appreciated. And please give Gina some feedback. I want her blog to continue to be successful. So please give her feedback. Thank you. Let her know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of. That would be fantastic. Oh, thank you very much. That's awesome.
No problem.
Yeah, I hope it continues too. I really would like to continue doing this. So
that would be fantastic indeed. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
All right.
Back again soon.
All right. See you later.
Yep. Bye-bye. I'd like to thank Shavon for joining us this week. As always, if you have comments, questions, or would like to read the show notes, you can go to thisweekinheresy.com. There, you can also subscribe to the show via iTunes or the Stitcher app, join our forums, or follow us on Twitter at TWIH Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.